Would you believe me that a team who scored 13 points on a 6-5 football team in the very stadium we are standing in right now scored 42 points on one of the 10 best teams in college football according to the college football playoff rankings? I'm Stephen Means, that's Andrew Gillis, and that's Stefan Krajisnik. Ohio State beat Tennessee 42-17 to advance to the quarterfinal of the college football playoff. Stefan, would you have believed that if you didn't just watch it with your own eyes? I mean, what did we learn the last 3 weeks about Ohio State?
Well, we learned, as Jerry here is telling us, that they played pretty well today. It's funny because we've talked all year. We talked about it leading into the Indiana game about how the Michigan State level blowout from a few years ago doesn't really happen in college football anymore just because of the clocks changing and things like that. This was like the closest thing we've seen. It was in the college football playoff. So it surprised me. I did not expect this. I thought this offense would play better, but I predicted 28-17 final score. You guys were both somewhere close to there. We all
28-13 for me.
Yeah, we were all in that realm of 25 to 30 points for this Ohio State team, because we did think we all thought this Ohio State offense was going to play better, but this Tennessee defense would be able to do some things to slow them down, especially with that defensive line. We learned that this coaching staff is capable of putting together a game plan that works around the offensive line issues. I think that was the biggest thing for me going into this, is that I think they could play well, that I think they could win, yes, 100%, but that we're still going to be that issue of this is your offensive line going up against that defensive line. And I thought what Ohio State did really well is working around that. There was a few times where, Will Howard got a hit, and I don't think Tegra Shabula played necessarily the best game, but overall, Chip Kelly and Ryan Day had a plan where those deficiencies were not going to matter. And I don't know if that surprised me, but it's a tough task because there's there's injuries, there's movement on the offensive line. There's just a lot of questions there. So it didn't necessarily surprise me, but it's impressive that they were able to do it.
Andrew, what did you learn in this weird 3-week period about a team who scored 10 points 3 weeks ago and now they scored 42?
That Ohio State has that ability, like Stefan said, that Ohio State has that somewhere within them. You guys ever, maybe it was you as kids, maybe it was your friends, maybe whatever, where you get that report card and you get an A and the teacher says, there's no excuse not to do this next quarter. Yeah. You get an A in science and, they tell you that and you're just like, yeah, I've got an A, this is great. And then they tell you, hey, wait a minute, you just did this. You can do it again. And you go, oh. Well, right now it's time for Ohio State to go, hoo boy, all right, we have another tough test. So you can do it. You can absolutely put together a game plan that maximizes your strengths, hides your weaknesses, but you're going to have to do it in a really tough manner. I said when Ohio State got this draw, when Ohio State got announced that they were on this side of the bracket, that I felt worse about their national championship hopes. And it was nothing really to do with them, although we were talking about them coming off a Michigan loss. I just was trying to make the point, you're going to have to beat, I believe Tennessee was 7th in the rankings, not in the actual standings where, the bracket was played out. But I believe they were 7th. They're going to have to play Oregon, number 1. They might have to play Texas, number 3. And then maybe Georgia, number 2. That is a really, really tough swing. Now, somebody's going to have to do it. But doing it 4 times in a row is very, very difficult. And this offensive line is going to have a major challenge against Oregon because, remember, Jordan Burch did not play in that game. And Ohio State's offensive line is fundamentally worse because of injuries since that game. So what I learned is that Ohio State has that ability because I don't care if Derek Harmon, Jordan Burch, Mateo Ungulale, if they're out there against Ohio State tonight, I still think Ohio State moves the ball with some success because we can't pretend like Tennessee's defensive line was not good. I know Ohio State made them look not very good tonight. Tennessee's defensive line, Tennessee's defense is very good, and Ohio State just played that way. So I think Ohio State has that ability in them, and we have seen Chip Kelly and Ryan Day prove tonight, we've seen the players prove tonight that they can do it, that they can run the table, even with all of the warts that we talked about this team having after the Michigan loss.
I learned a couple of things. The first thing I learned is I just watched a second-year offensive lineman who was probably playing a year too early when he started the first 2 games of the year because Donovan Jackson was injured, play both guard positions in a college football playoff game. And did anybody notice him?
No. Not in a bad way. Not in a bad way. There was one good play where I went, he just blew that dude up. And every part of the game the rest of the way, I was like, oh, the offensive line looks fine.
It's nuts that he was excelling at one spot, let alone 2 spots. I noticed Luke Montgomery is aggressive. Ryan Day had a lot of good things to say about Luke Montgomery after the game. Travion Henderson's 29-yard rushing touchdown. Luke Montgomery put a defensive lineman in the ground and created a hole so wide we could have gotten 7 yards from it. Maybe.
Not Andrew.
Oh, I'm more 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Give me the ball up the middle, and linebackers are friggin' taking. They're hiding.
I learned Donovan Jackson's a darn good left tackle, man, for what he is. We had a conversation after I found him, just because I just wanted to get his gauge on this game versus James Pierce versus Abdul Carter. I'm not going to tell you what his answer was, because I promised him I wouldn't tell people, but I'm going to give him my answer was. Has anybody seen James Pierce? I'm just saying. He looked pretty Donovan Jackson looked pretty good here. Kudos to him. I thought Josh Fryer, even though he was a little gimpy for a drive there, I thought he looked pretty good. The only time I genuinely noticed an offensive line flaw was on the first drive when Tegra Shabola got beat really badly and it was a sack, and Ohio State essentially got bailed out because of a face mask call. So I learned that, okay, this offensive line is going to be salvageable if you scheme it up the right way, which, to your point, Andrew, Ryan Day and Chip Kelly both did that thing. That's what I learned about Ohio State's team. The other thing I learned was I've been kind of soft playing I believe in Ohio State against any team that isn't wearing maize and blue with winged helmets. I'm going to say that with some bass in my voice now. I think I believe in Ohio State against any team in America who is not wearing maize and blue and winged helmets. They have a Michigan problem. And I think for the last 3 weeks, we were all trying to decide and figure out if that problem is systematically bigger or is it literally just about Michigan. And Tennessee was probably the perfect team for them to get that tested against. It's a Michigan problem. It's flat out a Michigan. Dylan Sampson, anybody seen him?
He got hurt. He did get hurt tonight.
Right, but also Ohio State scored 21 points in the first quarter, and so you can't run the ball after that. Exactly. Which you brought up the Michigan State game, that's what happened. Ohio State got on them offensively early, and so you can't use Kenneth Walker III anymore. So it's more that. They also did lose some weapons, but this is a Michigan problem. They overthink the Michigan game. You know what the good thing is? Michigan's not on their schedule again until next November. So they've got a year to figure out that. They've got 10 days to figure out Oregon. And I have a lot more faith in their ability to do so, and that game is just going to be another haymaker, heavyweight fight. Let's see who comes out on top. And I don't think either way we're going to come out of that game thinking any less of either one of those teams, because I think those are the two best teams in the country. One team just can't get out of its own head, and the other one has no issue with that. And so as a result, they didn't play in Indianapolis, but they'll play in L.A., and what I think at this point might be the pseudo-national championship game. We'll be in L.A. Get the text 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. Go listen to Buckeye Talk wherever you find podcasts. Andrew, Stefan, Stephen, we will see you in Los Angeles when the Buckeyes play Oregon. See ya.